Hey, Emily Y. Wu here. I produce this show and a couple of others at Ghost Island Media. We hope you're safe and well, wherever you are. One quick announcement. We have just launched a newsletter. It's called Waste Not a Newsletter. It's written every week by Nature Nate and Yu-Chen, our production assistant, who's been with us for at least half a year now. Check it out. It's wastenotwhynot.substack.com. You can also find the direct link in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Nature Nate, and I just turned 1 year old. Wow. For this special anniversary episode, I'm joined by our new production assistant, Yu-Chen, at the studio. Say hi. Say hi to the fans.
Hi.
Actually, Yu-Chen isn't really new. He's been with us since episode... He's been with us a while. But we only recently tricked him into becoming full-time. How do you feel? Is that exciting? Is it exciting to be full-time?
Well, yeah, I'm really nervous about this transition to being full-time. Because, I only hopped on halfway through the show, and I feel like there's really a lot I need to catch up on about this show, about environmental knowledge, before I can really become qualified to do this full-time.
I think you're already qualified.
Well, yeah, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
I just don't feel like I'm good enough.
Well, you are good enough. And today, we're going to look back on our 1 year journey to help prepare you, or maybe, show you what you really signed up for. And in the process, we're going to figure out what it means to make a science podcast. Be warned, we talked to a lot of people for this episode. People who did all the backstage, behind the curtain kind of work. Literally, we had a tent. It was made out of curtains. More on this later.
Some of these voices you may have heard before on the podcast. Some of their names you may have seen in the credits.
So yeah, this episode is not just me monologuing for 40 minutes, unfortunately. Let's dive in. Whatever music we decide to pick. Hi, I'm Nature Nate.
And I'm Yu-Chen.
And this is Waste Not Why Not, a podcast on how not to save the environment. I'm an environmental researcher based in Taipei, working on energy, ocean, and waste issues.
And I am an anthropologist studying Nature Nate.
Happy to be your subject.
Part 1. To all the Emilys who have produced before me. Let's start with Ghost Island Media, the podcasting company that produces this show. So at the beginning, it was Nate and Emily, right? It was you and two producer Emilys, I remember?
Yes and no. At first, it was just me, Nature Nate, and Emily Y. Wu.
Hey, Emily Y. Wu here. You've heard my voice on the show. I produce this show and a couple of others at Ghost Island Media.
This was October 2018. Emily had just moved back to Taiwan.
And I come back to Taiwan with the idea that I wanted to start this podcasting company, and I was looking for a host. And so we kind of met at the exact same time where you were looking for a producer and I was looking for a host. We just started working right after that.
Wow, that sounds really easy. You sound like you had an easy start.
Well, it wasn't that easy. There was a farting dog.
Our first studio was at my brother's apartment where I was crashing. It turned out to be the perfect recording environment because that room it's quite small, but there were so many books in it. It was the perfect sound-absorbing room.
So we had to keep ourselves in this room, and it had to be quiet, and Emily's brother had a dog, and the dog was a bit old, and the dog wanted to be with us while we recorded, and, well, nature happened, and we were stuck in a hot room with this older dog.
Whose name is Taylor.
The dog's name is Taylor. Thank you, Taylor, for being a good sport and for eating corn.
But that was just the first 3 episodes, right? What happened afterwards?
Well, yeah, after that, then I stuck my head inside a metal tube for 2 more episodes. And then Emily made a tent for me to record in.
Later on, we built a tent at a co-working space, and it was this really silly tent that was built from kind of IKEA rods and curtains. But somehow, because it was in the basement and because of the space we were given, it was really good sound quality. We got really lucky.
Wait. Okay, but rewind. There was the other Emily, right? There was 2 Emilys?
Yeah, surprisingly, it wasn't actually that confusing at the time. There was Emily Cardinelli, a second Emily, who joined us to help kick off and work on the first 3 episodes.
When I moved to Taipei in 2018, I guess, that's where it all started.
You might remember Cardinelli's voice from episode 4 on straws.
Cool. Okay, for the last 7 minutes, I've been watching this video of these people trying to pull something out of a turtle's nose.
That's right. We made her watch a bloody turtle video on repeat for 40 minutes. Don't worry, Yu-Chen. We won't put you through that today. And she also helped to build that tent with Emily. I didn't help build the tent with Emily. The thing is, back then, not only were we bootstrapping, we still are, but we were also doing it back then too. We were just figuring shit out together. How do you develop a new show? What should Nature Nate sound like? How can Nature Nate best brainwash you?
I think Waste Not, Why Not let me have a fun, pretty relaxed environment on how to produce a new podcast. It was an incredible opportunity to have as like a baby producer, to get to do so much work and invest so much time and thought into shaping some of the early sounds of the show.
Ah, yes, the early sounds. A lot of you have talked to me about the sound effects, and some of you loved them, some of you didn't like them. However you feel, they were a key part of the way the show sounded in the very beginning.
Paper is the mass-produced solution, and it's one of the worst alternatives. You heard me. Paper is not your friend.
I low-key am still a fan of the zany sound effects, but there is a very soft spot in my heart. If you listen to Dolly Parton's America, he just does an incredible job, and he mixes music himself. And those kinds of soundscapes, I think, really drive home points. And I'm so inspired all the time.
As an experiment, take some printer paper and try to drink from that. Go ahead. I will wait.
But yeah, that kind of shit is my lifeblood.
Part 2. We are all outsiders. So, Nate, that was all great and all, but, well, I still don't know anything about the environment. I mean, of course I'm already learning so much just from listening to Waste Not, Why Not, but I feel like I'm still an outsider. Like, what's the circular economy? What's EPR? CSR? That's something good, right? And should I stop eating meat, or?
Whoa, buddy. One at a time. No one knows everything, except for me. That's why we're in this together. It's not just you and me and the podcasting team, but like the entire world. We're all in this.
I wondered if the other people who worked on the show before also had the same concern. So I called them. I'm an anthropologist. That's what I do. I harass people.
Definitely a layperson in all things climate change.
That's Givens. She helped us make a yet unreleased Patreon video. But back to my main point. Givens, being a layperson, an outsider, was actually very helpful. She helped to change the way I talk to and about other environmental people. When we first started making this show, I would describe it as the only good environmental podcast. And she said, why don't you just not describe it that way? You don't need to tear other people down. And she was right. And that was a trend that followed the rest of the show. Waste Not, Why Not's become, I hope anyway, more inclusive over time.
I mean, I think that the show is ultimately empowering, and it takes the problem seriously, but it also takes seriously the role that any old listener could have in addressing those problems.
So around the time Givens joined us, this marked the transition for Waste Not, Why Not, from being one about trash talking the greenwashers to actually having a conversation with other environmentally minded people. And to that end, we did our first live show in August 2019. Hi, I'm Nature Nate. This is Waste Not, Why Not Live, and I'm a very tall man based in the Red Room, and we're going to be talking about electric vehicles. You know, we wanted to do a live show because podcast listening and also podcast making can be a very solitary activity. It's just you talking into a computer, or for the listener, it's just some voice inside your head. But when we had the live show, that community became real.
Wow, give me the chills.
While I was figuring out how to build a Waste Not Why Not community, Emily Y. Wu and Ghost Island Media, now a real business entity with 3 co-founders, were developing other shows and trying to get them launched. So they found Alison to help produce Waste Not Why Not.
So my name is Alison Chen and I am from Sydney in Australia.
That was around September 2019. When I came back from my annual migration back to the US, suddenly there was a new producer.
I'm a podcast producer, editor, and trainer, and my area is in narrative documentary audio.
That's also around when I got involved as well. And the thing was, neither Alison nor I were exactly well-versed in the environment. We had to figure out how we fit into this environmental conversation.
So for context, I'm not like an outdoor environment type of person. I don't voluntarily go on bushwalks. I live in Sydney, but I don't swim at the beach. That's just not really something that I enjoy.
For the record, spending time outdoors isn't exactly a prerequisite to knowing or caring about the environment. I don't really actually spend that much time outdoors. That's just not me.
And so when Nate was like, well, actually, that's not me, I was like, oh, I can fit into this conversation as well as someone who doesn't want to who wants to care about, for example, the way that we're polluting our oceans without being it's because I really like swimming in the ocean that that's why I care about this.
And because ultimately I want to brainwash you, having someone who doesn't understand what I'm saying becomes pretty important. It's like a filter to make sure that my arguments are coming across, that what I'm saying makes sense to someone who doesn't really know that much about the environment. Take the carbon offsets episode, for example.
I'm someone who has encountered the idea of carbon offsets because it comes up when you book a plane ticket. And so what was really interesting is working on the carbon bargain episode. It's that's a decision that I've had to face. Having to choose whether or not to pay that extra couple of dollars was my contact point.
Judging by how popular that episode was, this was probably true for a lot of people.
But, what I had learned from doing that episode with Nate was how it's just not a good use of our limited resources. And probably more concerning for me was how it basically being this kind of online shopping experience, which isn't actually going to change how we behave.
Maybe I just say when I first met Alison. When I first met Emily and then even when I met Alison, I thought I was really good at science communication, but I would explain something or talk about something related to the environment and they would just give me this look like I was from another planet.
This was a big deal to Nate when he started talking about extender producer responsibility. And I was like, I understand that those are English words, but I have no idea what they mean together. And I remember Nate being very surprised.
And then, when we went to AAAS and met all these science communicators, I feel like things finally started to click and I started to realize that science communication is not something you do once or for one person. It's something that you have to figure out how to do for a large audience, for a mass audience. And that's why people like Alison were so helpful in crafting the voice of Waste Not Why Not.
Part 3. What now?
Hey, Yu-Chen. How are you feeling? How are you feeling so far?
I think I'm feeling better. I think hearing other people talk about their experiences working on the show, their time here, and their relationship with Nate, that actually made me feel a lot better. I don't really know how to describe it, really, because I'm still kind of overwhelmed a bit. But
Is it comforting? Is it a comforting feeling?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel comforted. I do.
Is there anything else you want to know?
Yeah, I think I just want to check in with the co-founders one last time. What was their direction for the show, or what are their plans for Waste Not Why Not in the future? But yeah, I guess I just want to check in with you and Emily.
And there is this sound god guy.
Yeah, so what's up with that?
So someone else that you might have heard in the credits was Thomas Lee, Sound God. And he's one of the co-founders of Ghost Island Media.
And I just, I want Nature Nate to be famous. I want Nature Nate to be the Ben Shapiro of environmental podcasts. The stir shit up Nate, right? That personality, the lighting fire everywhere, but intentionally, because he's able to defend often quite convincingly why he's lighting the fire, right? Which is where your researcher background came in.
I don't really know about this, but I'm going to let him finish.
But that said, have that gone too far, or what do you think about? I'm asking this because when I saw some of I listened to the new AAAS series episode, and I feel like you seem more in your, you seem happier.
That's another thing Tom picked up on. I wouldn't say I'm happier, but for some reason people think I'm optimistic.
You seem happier, just kind of nerded out. So my sort of reflection as a producer is did I overproduce him or did I push him too far? He never wanted to be, he just wanted to be a nerd and make, snarky, very smart, sniping people, right? How did that work out for you is my question for you, I guess.
It's not weird that people think I'm happy or optimistic. I think what's weird to me is that people want to listen to what I have to say, and I don't know at what point. Everyone's always been supportive, but for some reason I just never thought that I could be someone to communicate science. And I think that I probably sound optimistic because I'm happy doing this because I just legitimately enjoy making Waste Not, Why Not. It's not that I'm optimistic about the future. I'm deeply worried, but I have slightly more hope because I've met so many interesting and intelligent people who I've interviewed for this show, but also who've worked on this show behind the scenes.
Wow, Nate. I didn't realize you had all these thoughts in you.
Goof.
Wow, Nate.
I do, and I have a lot more, but I don't want to make this show just like a big old monologue. So, it might sound like there were a lot of different people working on this show, and there was, but I don't think that was because we were unstable. It wasn't like we had this crazy churn of different people coming through. Rather, there were people who at different points in their life had a little bit of extra time that they wanted to contribute to this, indie podcast. They wanted to kind of make Waste Not, Why Not into something, and they wanted to leave their mark. And that's something I deeply appreciate. I could have made a podcast by myself. I could have just made Nature Nate Talks, and I don't think anyone would have listened to that. It takes a lot of talent and it takes a lot of listening ability that I don't know if I had when I first started making this show to hear other people's voices and to create a scientific message that resonates with not just your immediate friends, your media network, but hundreds and thousands of people. That's why I'm so grateful for this past year and all the help that everyone's given. People who we listed in the show and talked to, but also other people who helped in other ways, donating music, time, giving us feedback. Was the past for the show and the present and for the future. And for the future, I want the show to just keep growing. I want the show to become even more diverse and more inclusive and talk to more people. And I know Emily has her own plans too. I think there's a lot of things we want to do. We talked about making Nate into a cartoon character.
I think there's a lot of things we want to do. I think we've talked about a lot of different formats that we wanted to do. We wanted to try one episode where it's fiction. It's like a short story. We haven't done that.
We wanted to go on tour again.
We wanted to go on tour again, and then the pandemic happened.
Some kind of thing going on right now in the rest of the world.
We wanted to make Nate into an animation. I still want to do that. We wanted to do a musical. Didn't we want to do a musical?
You might have wanted to do a musical. That was not what I wanted to do.
We did get you to sing in the last episode.
You did get me to sing. Definitely, I think a fictional radio play was something we had talked about a lot and then never did. Yeah, and then just more topics. There's I feel like I have years of content just on this one show still.
So Yu-Chen, does that answer your questions? Do you feel more at home now in the Waste Not, Why Not family? He grimaced when I said Aim's gun at Yu-Chen. So do you feel more comfortable now? Do you realize that, nobody really knew what they were doing? I wasn't a podcaster when we started doing this, and the people who worked on the show weren't environmentalists. We're all learning new things here.
I mean, I'd always knew there was a space for factual programming about science, right? But I guess I didn't realize until after we started working on the show how much attention there's been on sustainability.
Working from, okay, this is the issue that I want to address, and then this is the specific aspect of that issue that maybe I personally can affect or influence, has made me think a little bit more about how I can be a better steward of the environment.
This show and this ongoing conversation about the environment isn't just for people who are interested in the environment. It's about caring about people and how people think and act and behave and go about in the world, and I identify with that.
Do you feel more at home now in Waste Not, Why Not?
I think so. This has been the Waste Not, Why Not podcast, recorded at MyCoin, a Bitcoin exchange in Taipei, Taiwan. A big thank you to everyone who took my calls. That's Emily Cardinelli in Florida, Gibbons Parr in Boston, Alison Chen in Sydney, Thomas Lee in Hong Kong. This has been a Ghost Island Media production. I'm Yu-Chen Lai. I produced and edited this special episode. Executive producers are Emily Y. Wu and Nature Nate. Brand design by Thomas Lee. Thank you so much for listening. You can support this show by donating monthly to our Patreon or subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. We are Waste Not, Why Not on Patreon and Substack. We are Waste Not Pod on Twitter. Send us questions at ask@wastenotwhynot.com. See you next time. Bye.